that make sense?
Yeah, I'll talk to you about this afterwards, because I have some other questions, but, all right.
Director Calvin?
I thought Director Baker has something.
So currently, we got water leaks that's costing the lighting district $400 to $600
A month.
a month. So the water district's gonna be losing that revenue.
I gotta go to the bathroom. So yes, you are correct. Is that all the comment you had?
That was it.
Dr. Calvin?
In that vein, I'm assuming that the water loss was not actually budgeted into the actual expense. That's additional in terms of our utility expense for that department.
So the water that we're paying for is budgeted in the lighting department's cost, but it's not part of the amount we're asking for to replace the good lines.
Right. So the other thing is, if I understand this correctly, 12th and 14th Street, where it's two sidewalks, the county, when they put in this infrastructure, decided not to put in any root barriers around the trees in that section.
Right.
And then decided to run concrete on top, pretty much over the piping with exposed roofs and everything else, and didn't think that there would be a problem at all during that entire.
I was here when they were building it, but I wasn't part of the decision-making process, so I don't know what they were or weren't thinking, but yes, that is what they did.
Is that concrete section also stamped concrete, or is it just a plain old,
Some of them are stamped.
Okay. Would it make sense to have them all standardized as stamped? Sorry,
It would make more sense to standardize them as plain concrete.
Yes. Whatever would be best, make it standardized, make the sidewalk look nice and not have it falling apart. That's all.
Director Davis?
Yeah, just to kind of clarify, I understand. Do you know what 120 PVC is?
Yeah.
Okay, it's thin.
Yeah.
But the 120 stands, it'll take 120 pounds of pressure, water pressure. That's,
Well,
I mean, I understand it's thin. I put that in before and so on. But my question is, have you checked the section from one side of that concrete to the other? Does that have to be replaced? I mean, what? If it isn't leaking, just tie in at one end if you want to change everything else, but leave that in the concrete there.
so the only way to know for sure would be to open it, cap each end, and pressure test it and see if it leaks. But the cost to do that would be more than the cost to just dig it up and replace it. And then if we have to come back later and dig it up again, then we have to do it again.
Kelly, you mean to tell me that you couldn't expose one end of that pipe, put a coupler on it, and run a hose under pressure and see if it leaks?
So our problem has been, I'm sorry, I was incorrect, that doing that in itself would not be more expensive.
Right.
But what we found in doing all of these repairs is that you could come over here and be on this corner of this computer, let's say this is 10 feet, and you're over here and you fix this. Okay, next week you're right here. Okay, next week you're right here. And then you get a break. You get to go all the way over here. And then you get to come back over here. So between this end and that end, we might have 40 different fittings in there where we replaced it 5 or 6 different times.
What do you figure replacing it with, Schedule 40?
We're replacing with Schedule 40 under the roadway and under the concrete sections. It really should be put in as Schedule 8. Schedule 120 isn't necessarily that it can hold 120 pounds, because Schedule 40 can hold like 200 pounds. It's the thickness of the wall.
Yeah,
and I know you know what it is, but the problem we're having is that we'll fix it over here, and then we'll be right back to fix it over here. We had one that it broke 6 inches away from where we fixed it. So leaving a section, any section there, is just going to cost us more later. If we're already going to have somebody out to fix concrete, it's going to be cheaper to have them fix an extra 5 feet or 10 feet than to have somebody come back and do that. We are not concrete finishers. We can make it look like garbage and get it back in there, but that's not what you know, for the longevity and for the beautification of San Miguel, doing that is not right.
Let me ask you this. Okay, you have pavers in different sections, you know, that seem to work pretty good. And, you know, if you think you need to take that section of concrete out, replace it with pavers rather than concrete, and anybody can lay pavers, you know, and put it in there. Or you could even, if you want to get fancy, you could use regular bricks. That makes a nice surface.
ADA.
So then that way there, if you ever did have if you had another problem, your pipe ain't underneath concrete. And then is all those are on timers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, they're all on timers, well, you don't need to replace those.
No, the timers are fine.
Yeah, right,
We're talking about the pipe.
yeah. So on.
So we can replace the concrete with pavers, we can replace it with bricks. The problem is if we replace it with anything other than what was there initially, we have to go through the permitting process with with the county and make sure that it still meets what they want, because the county is ultimately responsible for that sidewalk. So if we go replace it with pavers and somebody trips on it and breaks their leg or smashes their face, then they're gonna come back on us. If the county's getting sued, then we're gonna get sued.
Who put in those pavers by the post office?
The district did, but that was the direction at the time, and they shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's draw this conversation to a close. Did you finish your comment up, Director Davis?
No, that's pretty much it.
All right.
But you said that they didn't put anything, did they pour the concrete right up to the trees?
No, we can go around the trees,
Yeah, right.
but you gotta go, there's an outer sidewalk and an inner sidewalk.
Yeah, I understand
We need to go between the two through the planters.
Yeah.
And there's sections in between each planter bed that is concrete that we need to go through.
Yeah, I think 5 minutes are up, so let's draw this to a conclusion. Renee, did you have one?
Yeah, I do. Just one little safety thing that I had noticed, and I don't know, I think they're still there. You know the hollyhocks that are growing on, right by Bank of Italy?
Yeah.
One time this happened, as a little girl was crossing, I couldn't see her. She was right behind the hollyhocks. And I almost hit her. And so just, I love hollyhocks, they're beautiful, but that's a really, really bad place. So it's impeding any visual.
Right.
So if those could be removed,
Yeah, we'll cut them out.
okay,
Is that it?
yeah.
I have one comment. So I live in Jessetown, community there, on the HOA, and we're fighting, those trees, roots are ripping up the 120, right and left, we can't keep up with it. Sidewalks are buckling, we're trying to dig under the sidewalk, and that's not working out. Trying to get somebody out to do that, it's expensive to do concrete work removal and installation, but it has to be done correctly, and as you pointed out. But chasing leaks like that, and we've been doing that for a couple of years over there, and it's torn up all of my landscaping. I keep having to go out, so I just finally went through and replaced everything. All right, but that's a project just at my house. So, and that's all I have to say about that. Yeah.
So, I did talk with Mr. Dodds the other day about this item and actually about the plants in the landscaping. And I'm gonna bring up a comment about whether or not we can work with like the Los Palos RCD about figuring out, actual plants that would be appropriate, for not only our downtown corridor, but also future sites we're looking at, doing us, figuring out the soil, figuring out, how to root management, those kinds of things that can all be baked into our master plan. The last thing I want to add is the issues that he's having in Jazzytown. That's why I repeatedly have said we need to have standards and an ordinance for lighting and landscaping in this community. So then it doesn't fall back on homeowners and anyone else because the county said, hey, let's put in some, let's let someone put in something substandard. So,
Well, unfortunately, the contractor that a development uses, or the using method that a developer's contractor uses, is not necessarily something that you can write an ordinance to get out of. So, although we can say our infrastructure that belongs to us has to be this,
right.
it's up to the developer to say, Joe contractor, I want you to put in, Schedule 40, Schedule 80, or steel, whatever. So that's not something that the county or we can necessarily say you have to use this material, unless it's something that we own.
Right, and that's a policy question for not under this agenda item, we're talking about this agenda, so.
Public comment, anybody like to comment on this?
Yeah, very well. Quick comment, I only built 50,000 square feet of buildings, done plumbing, foundations, concrete, electrical, framing, my cabinet maker, built every house I lived in. When you put something under concrete, you sleeve it, so you can pull it out and replace it. Anybody that puts anything under a permanent thing that didn't sleeve it is an idiot. And you can bore underneath that concrete if the concrete is good, and you can put it in a sleeve, and then you can always have a replacement. And they should be looking at PEX pipe instead of these other things where you could have sections where you could replace them easily with boxes on both sides of whatever your situation is, where you have control points, and you take your open areas and you make new runs where it's easy, and then you do your cross sections where you need to do it and you minimize it. This isn't rocket science. If you're gonna do them one at a time, yeah, you're gonna pay a lot of money for some guy to replace stuff that doesn't need to be replaced. They bored all the way up 229 from the loading chute past my place 5 miles to put in fiber optics. We can bore a few sections underneath. There's all kinds of companies out there. You can get your own thing to blow something underneath the sidewalk to do what you need to do. This isn't that hard to do. So it's your deal. A full-grown tree doesn't really need that much water. I don't even know why you need to irrigate a tree. I got 362 acres with trees growing all over it. I never irrigated any of them.
Okay, is there any other public comment?
Yeah, again, just like to say, just real quick thing, I hope everybody keeps in mind, look at what the ROI is on this. If we calculate on average of $500 per month in wasted water expenses coming from lighting, we're talking a little over 3 years to recoup the expense of getting this repaired and done the right way. That's all I'm saying.
Any other public comment? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution as written.
I'll second.
Have a motion on the floor to, by director.
That's fine. Just, have we looked at the alternative that Greg was talking about? Or is that something that's been considered?
We're actually past our board comment now.
Okay.
So
We're on to the, we've got a motion and second here.
Okay, ready?
Yes.
Have a motion on the floor by Director Calhoun to approve resolution 2024-06, second by Director Gregory. I'll have a vote. Director Gregory?
Yes.
Director Davis?
Not the way it is, no.
Okay. Director Calhoun?
Yes.
Director Baker?
No.
Director Smiley?
Yes.
Passes 3-2-0 absence.
So the reason why I
Actually, excuse me, if that's a 3/5, that's meets 4 of the 5, then.
What?
So it's 3 out of 5.
5/5, excuse me. Pardon me.
It's 3/5,
Okay,
yeah.
it's okay.
Yes,
Okay.
I had my pre-report.
So, just a comment on that, the reason why I did vote on that, because I did think that that was a bit high and the concrete and everything. The boring is what did come to mind, and I had thought about that, that's why I was gonna talk to you about this later. But the reason why I did vote for it is because if we could do it for less, I'll do it for that, I'll look into it, and that's the reason why, Kelly, that's, so, anyway.
Well, again, this is the high end. We were-
Exactly, and that's what you said, and so hopefully it'll be a lot, so, anyway,
Did
thank
you
you.
have something else you wanted to say about?
Well, just the reason I voted no was because I didn't know if that alternative, what Greg had mentioned, has been looked into.
So, although we are past the discussion of, the labor is being done as a district so that we can control that kind of activity and we can use whatever best means are available to get the work done. Obviously, most of it we're going to be, opening it up to do it. Some of the areas with a lot of concrete, we can bore under them. They may already have a sleeve. We have to really open it up and see. But the cost that we were asking for was basically the high end if we had to open everything up.
Worst case.
Hopefully we don't have to do that.
Okay, close the discussion. Moving on to item 5, continued discussion regarding water and sewer services crossing parcel lines. Discuss and provide direction to staff.
So this is back again with slightly more information, but to get better direction from the board of which way the board would like to go forward from here. One option is to do a policy change at the board level to allow the board or allow staff to do relocations of services as a matter of policy. That would require changing the policy. The board would have to vote on, obviously, that policy and move forward with that. The implications of doing that is the initial cost of the policy, which would be several $1,000s and probably take several months. The end result would be allowing staff to do relocations of services that were not an operational change at the customer request. Another option would be to direct me to replace this specific service outside of our policy, and that would correct this particular instance. That would cost between $1,500 and $3,000 depending on the extent of paving, basically. That work would be done by district staff and would relocate the meter in this particular instance to somewhere on the subject property, remove the meter that's existing in the alley, and it would be up to the homeowner to connect to the new meter. Or the third alternative, which is not overly popular, is to have the homeowner move the meter on their own to a district standard, which would probably cost them roughly the same as it would cost us to do it ourselves. The issue with doing a major policy change is that if we do that, we know that there is more meters like this, or more services like this. There's more sewer services like this. The sewer services are a little bit different because we don't own them. We own water services to the meter. Sewer services, we only own the main and the street. So it could open the district up to an unknown amount in order to move meters for basically everything. At any rate, these service lines or water lines past the meter on the customer's property or after the meter, wherever they lie, is still the homeowner's responsibility. and will always remain the homeowner's responsibility. So I'm sure there's more comments.
Okay, more comments, Mr. Baker, I'm looking for.
Sure, so my understanding is that the meter should be on the property, and the reason that it wasn't on the property back when it was done was, that's not right, and that the code now is for it to be on the property, correct? And it sounds, from what I got from the last meeting, it was too hard to do it because of a retaining wall, or whatever the reason. It was just sort of,
So when this
to
house,
sum it up, I would say we were too lazy to do it right. Or someone in the county or whoever did it.
well, I wouldn't say that. That obviously I wasn't here in the 30s when it was built.
Right.
Maybe I was, I'm not sure.
You're not 90 years old?
It's not 90 years old, is it? Come on.
All right, no comment from, you'll have time here at the end if you'd like, but please do not.
So I don't know the exact month or year that the home was built, but until 2 years ago, there was no line in 11th Street, which is where, if that home was built today, their service would come off of 11th Street. When that home was built and when the home on the alley was built, there was only two options: an alley main, or the main in the alley, or the main on the other side of Mission Street. So I'm sure you guys can understand that the Mission Street option would have been pretty much financially unavailable to most people. The Mission Street, being the old Highway 101, has a concrete highway underneath the paved Mission Street. So going underneath that is pretty onerous at whoever wants to do it. So when the house that he lives in right now was the first house, the house in the alley was the second house, so they just went across the property to put the meter in the alley because that was the closest available main to that house. When they built the house behind it, as they've done in numerous properties around town, they just built the house with no consideration to the fact that there was a line there. So again, if they were going to build it today, that's not what we would allow. But because that was the only main available, that was allowed at the time. And the standards weren't the same at the time that those homes were built.
Okay, so I thought there was an existing meter, and then they couldn't replace that meter, so they put the other meter over here.
So when a new meter was put in, it was put in the alley because that was the closest main. Again, the new main on 11th Street was only put in 2 years ago. So I think that meter was moved in like 2007, somewhere back there. So the main on 11th Street that if they were building it today, we would tell them they have to connect to 11th Street. If we were building it today, that's where they would connect. But when that house was built, the main on 11th Street didn't exist. And when the meter was moved, that main on 11th Street didn't exist. So it had no opportunity to do that. Does that make sense?
No, I'm not getting it. You get it? So you had a meter, you had a line, and then you had to put in a new meter.
Right.
So you couldn't. And then the new meter, the pipe goes through the old meter, right?
Right.
To the house. So now you got 2 meters. And the reason you didn't replace the original meter was why?
I don't remember exactly why the meter wasn't removed. Generally, the meter would be removed.
Because that's what should have, in my opinion, been the correct way. It would have been to replace that meter on that property, not to put a new meter somewhere else.
Right.
Okay.
So part of the problem is that meter is partially under a wall. If any of you have dug up any steel lines buried in the ground for any amount of time around here, you'll know that they don't last long. A lot of the service lines from the mains in the street to the meters that were put in the 40s and 50s and even up through the 80s were steel, and as soon as you touch them, they start crumbling. So part of when I first started working here, part of the problem was where do you stop? Because you start over here And you just keep nibbling off a piece of that steel pipe until you get back somewhere where it's got a good enough steel pipe to connect to it. So being under a wall, going through the front yard, I imagine that at the time, the supervisor didn't want to replace it. I don't remember. I worked here then, but it wasn't my decision to do that then.
Out of your three options, you know, I am a little bit concerned about just the, I don't know that the district can afford to pay for the repairs and maintenance for all the corrections of the past right now, unless we did, you know, unless that there wasn't a consensus that, you know, that is just understanding it could be a Pandora's box to opening up all that as a policy change, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
So, just to be clear, this could have zero financial implication, or it could have everybody and their brother coming down here wanting something changed. If it was a policy decision, where it was a blanket, yes, we'll do that for you, then it could have, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars of implications depending on what actually is out there in the system. When we go through and we replace water mains, it's generally part of the deal to replace services at that point, because the services are generally as old as the main. So we'll go through and we'll replace them, but we replace them in place. We don't move them. We put them back where they were. If the board elects to replace this one service, it doesn't mean that everybody's going to come running down here and want their service changed. But it doesn't mean that nobody's going to come down here and say that.
Right.
So, I mean, we could do it on a case-by-case basis like we do now, or like we're having a discussion right now, where if somebody has a problem and they want us to deal with it, then they can come down. And then it would be a board decision at that point.
Right, I mean, yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is I'm not in favor of a policy change. I think the reason why this is even being addressed is because we had water being stolen, right? And so there was just some, you know, basically some criminal activity going on. Otherwise, nobody would have even been the wiser.
So, you know, aside from this particular instance, we've had a lot of people come down over the years and say that people are stealing their water. I would say probably 75% of them, people were actually stealing their water. And there is things to do to prevent water theft. If, in this particular case, Mr. Patterson is claiming that they're stealing it between the alley and the block wall, if that's the case, then, you know, this would fix it. If they're stealing it somewhere other than that, then replacing the service is not going to fix it.
Right. Okay, that's all.
Director Calvins?
Yeah, so my position would be, and this is just in preliminary thoughts, is that if we do go down a policy route change, I would narrow it and make it focused to be based on only new sections that we install or, you know, replace. So in essence, not blanket wide, but only on sections we're actively working on where we're going to replace a service line in place. I also think that honestly, long term, that we probably should actually require when people sell their properties or sell their homes, that they have to ensure the service lines are brought up to district standards in order for them to get service, for that property to get service in the future. I think it should be applied for both water and also for sewer laterals.
We can move forward on something like that. That would not be addressing a situation like we're.
No, but it would, if we actually had something like that, then we wouldn't even have the conversation. His line would have been off of 11th Street before we bought the home.
Sure.
So I'd like to make sure that happens so that we don't have another thing come before this board. But I think the question is dealing with what direction we want to go, if we want to go policy or not. If we do go policy, my position is only on sections that we have actively placed in the recent, past. That would be
So So that wouldn't really be a situation at all, because when we replace mains, we replace the service too.
But you place them in place.
So we replace them in place, but if somebody came to us at that point and said, hey, I actually need my service over here, then we would replace it over there, because at that point, we're already replacing the service, so moving it is not necessarily a problem. If they wanted it, instead of the back of the property, they wanted it in front of the property, obviously that's a problem, because now we're opening up a different street.
Right.
But just for instance, when we replaced the main on K Street, all of the properties on K Street got a new meter because we were already replacing one on K Street.
But but under our current policy, do we only replace up to the meter, or do we replace up to the building shut-off valve?
We're only legally obligated to the meter.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and our current standard is that the meter is at the property line.
Right.
And for, I would say, 90% of our properties, the meter is at a property line. It may not be the correct property line, but it's at a property line.
Okay. I'm curious to hear.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's for now.
Okay. Director Davis?
Yeah, I went over and looked at Mr. Patterson's situation there, and I still have a question. He has a meter right on the side of his house. What is that hooked up to?
There's a meter on the side of his house, or you're talking about the one next to the wall?
Yeah, I'm talking to one, 11th Street, he's got a entrance there. There's a meter right out there by just inside his yard where it should be, or outside.
Right. From that meter, it goes directly to the alley, directly to a meter at the alley. So the meter at the alley intercepted the service you had, which goes through the meter that's next to the wall, which is basically just a piece of piping at this point.
Yeah, well, that should be where the meter should be put.
Well, it won't be under the wall. So the new box would be under the wall.
Yeah.
It could be in that general area.
Yeah, you can still, get in there, and then that would be his water supply. And that would be what he paid for, what was running through that meter, not the one that's in the alley, and who knows where that line goes, but he's paying the bill.
Anything else, Director Davis, on that? Okay. My feeling, last but not least, first of all, I think that we should correct this for the gentleman. That's my feeling on it in this particular case. And secondly, I think that there should be some kind of a ordinance or whatever we need to do, policy put in place to deal with this in the future. It might include some of the things you've been talking about. When we go in to replace the line for new service, somebody buys the house, buys the property, then it's part of curb gutter and sidewalk, that kind of thing. And that policy could pretty much dictate what you want to do. You want to have the homeowner responsible for half and